médias. Le monde, c'est nous.
Hello, you're on the program. Good day to you, sir.
I very appreciate it. I very appreciate all what you are talking about it. Good day and good day to all the viewers of African Media. Thank you, African Media. Thank you for what you are doing.
The frequent recurrence of conflicts in several African states has often put children at the center of it all, thereby making them the most vulnerable, who are usually negatively affected. The use of children in violent conflict is a serious problem that continues to plague both the African continent and the international community as a whole. Thousands of children are recruited and used in this armed conflict, especially in Africa. Between 2005 and 2020, more than 93,000 children were verified as recruited and used by parties to conflict, although the actual number of cases is believed to be much higher. A recent report by the United Nations Peacekeeping Force in Congo, MONUSCO, disclosed that armed groups in South Kivu, a province of the Democratic Republic of Congo, recruited more than 470 children into their ranks last year, amongst whom 50 were killed, including 12 girls, and 169 suffered sexual violence. Different reports released in November last year by the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, indicated that the children of West and Central Africa are the most recruited by armed groups in the world, and also have the highest number of victims of sexual violence. According to the report, for 5 years, the region has seen increased attempts in which more than 21,000 children have been recruited by government forces and groups. The report found that more than 2,200 children in the region have been victims of sexual violence since 2016. Often referred to as child soldiers, these boys and girls suffer extreme forms of exploitation and abuse that are not fully captured by the term. Warring parties use children not only as fighters, but as scouts, cooks, porters, guards, messengers, and more. Many, especially girls, are also subject to gender-based violence. What then explains this latest trend? This on the internet. Stay with us.
Hello, you're on the program. Good day to you, sir.
I very appreciate it. I very appreciate all what you are talking about it. Good day and good day to all the viewers of African Media. Thank you, African Media. Thank you for what you are doing.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this other edition of Views on the Continent, where we take a look at the problems that are plaguing the continent at this point in time. And our focus this day is on the use of children in conflict, or the term commonly used is child soldiers. Now, the continent over the years has seen a rise in child soldiers due to the presence of conflicts in the continent, and this number seems to be going up rather than coming down. Latest report by the United Nations mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo states that just last year alone, over 470 children were recruited by armed groups. What then can be done to address this phenomenon? What can be done to address this recruitment of children into armed groups, or maybe the national military, as some reports have it? That's the question we are struggling to understand this day. Why are children usually at the center of conflict? Why do children have to suffer when conflicts take place? That's what we are looking at this day on the program. And for those of you who are just joining for the very first time, it is an interactive program where you can always call when the time is right to have your say on the day's topic or any other issue that is affecting the continent. And when it is time, our lines will be open and our numbers will be put on the screen so that you can always call us and have your say. And of course, we have someone in the studio with us to take a look at this rather disheartening trend that is going on in the continent and in the world at large. It is not only in Africa that we can find child soldiers, but today our focus is Africa. We want to see how we can find a way of addressing this issue that has affected so many young people, that has destroyed the lives of so many young people. And with us in the studio is Mr. Andrin Atam Ebakowa. He is a Pan-Africanist and a political analyst. Hello, sir, and thanks for joining us in the studio this day.
Thank you very much, Madam Florencia, and all the viewers of Africa Media. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
All right, in the minutes that follow, we shall be looking at this very particular topic more detailedly. But before then, let us get this report compiled for us by Agnes Temgwa as to how this trend has been going on and how the numbers keep going up. Take a listen.
History tells us a lot about child soldiers in Africa, as thousands of children are recruited and used in armed conflicts across the continent. Recruited children are often used by ruling parties not only as fighters but as cooks, porters, guards, messengers, and more. Many, especially girls, are also subjected to gender-based violence, including abduction, rape, and other forms of sexual violence. The latest data from the UN Peacekeeping Force in Congo, MONUSCO, revealed that 470 children were recruited by armed groups in South Kivu province of the Democratic Republic of Congo alone during last year. 50 of the children were killed, including 12 girls, and 169 suffered sexual violence. No child soldiers, however, were registered in the ranks of the armed forces of the Democratic Republic of Congo. The recruitment and use of children by armed forces and groups, which is defined as a war crime by the International Criminal Court, seems to increase as reported by the UNICEF revealed that these children are not only being employed by insurgents and terrorist outfits, but also government forces for conflicts and other purposes. Children in conflict-affected countries such as Burkina Faso, Central African Republic, Cameroon, Chad, Congo, Mali, Mauritania, and Niger are most at risk. This phenomenon due to the situation in Cameroon, the Central African Republic, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, and cross-border emergencies, including the crisis in the Sahel and the Lake Chad Basin region, is having devastating humanitarian consequences on children and communities aggravated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Several countries in the Sahel have been embroiled in conflict involving several armed groups, military campaigns by national armies, and international partners as well as militias. According to reports by the UNICEF, West and Central Africa regions hold the highest number of child soldiers with over 42,000. The Democratic Republic of Congo alone has consistently ranked first worldwide in the recruitment of child soldiers for conflicts between 2005 and 2020, with Nigeria ranking 4th and the Central African Republic 8th. The West and Central region also has the largest number of the United Nations verified cases of sexual violence against children, including rape, with 8,000 victims since 2005. Facing this alarming situation, the United Nations has called for parties to the conflict to prevent and end violations against children and for perpetrators to be held accountable. It also urged aid groups to increase the documentation of violations and to work to prevent and respond to them. UNICEF recently expressed the need for more than $92 million to protect children in emergencies across West and Central Africa, more than half of which is not yet funded. Children seem to be protagonists and victims at the time of innocent violence which they have to live with marks. As in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where some considerable progress in the fight against the recruitment of child soldiers have been noted, the great challenge remains the socio-economic integration of all children who leave armed groups in order to convince them never to return to the bush. It is really sad that children in Africa find themselves trapped in a conflict they didn't ask for. We keep on questioning the possibility to eradicate such an inhuman act.
Thank you very much, Agnes Temgwa, for that report, which actually highlights how this phenomenon has been going on in the continent and the areas that are most affected. Children who find themselves fighting wars, fighting in conflict. That is a point of discussion this day. What can be done to address this issue of child soldiers? We have children of below the age of 18 finding themselves fighting in conflict, and it is a situation that is very alarming in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where the South Kivu province just last year over 470 children were recruited by armed groups. What do you think can be done to address this issue that is actually destroying the lives of many youths on the continent. That's what we are talking about this day. And like I said, we have Mr. Andrin Atem Bako with us in the studio now. Mr. Bako, when you take a look at this current trend, just let's first of all look at the information provided by MONUSCO in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Just last year, it says 470 children were recruited by armed groups. What can you say about that?
Well, it is an unfortunate situation to people who are in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the DRC. Ever since they gained their independence, the country has been in severe civil conflicts. And we have also had the United Nations peacekeeping force in that country for over 2 decades, with an extra expenditure of about $1.2 billion to sustain the UN peacekeeping force, which they have not been able to calm down the conflict which is in the DRC Congo. And as a matter of fact, they have also been accused of rape of other children in the DRC Congo. We also remember that the UN also failed in the genocide in 1994 in Rwanda. In Haiti, the UN peacekeeping force who went there for humanitarian aid rather went and spread cholera in those areas in Haiti. So what am I simply trying to say here is that the issue here of children being recruited massively in the DRC Congo comes to play in line with what I call the Agenda 2063. You see, the strategy here is, if you look at the people who are setting the agenda for 2063, by then will not be alive. And then if you look at the population of the African people that are heavily targeted as we are speaking at the youth population, that simply means that the youth do not have a future. So indirectly, what the AU is trying to convince us here is that they are trying to buy the West enough time to loot and to leave Africa in a state of dead slaves. Because if you are talking of an emergence of 2063, then you should have been creating and making sure that Africa is free of conflicts. The AU has a military, and that military has not served any interest to protect the interests of the future of this African youth that we are talking about. We have an organization of the African Union that seems to be ignoring what is happening in the DRC Congo, while the Americans are there like vampires and ravaging the resources of that land. We are talking of the people living under abject poverty, mass population living in poverty, when yet we understand that that is the richest nation of the entire, the whole world. That is the richest country in the entire human race, but has a population of about 90-something million persons who are living in abject poverty. So the concern here is, how did the DRC Congo get to this point whereby the people are in this state in which they are, and yet we are claiming to say that we have a peacekeeping force of the United Nations whose presence are heavily felt in the DRC Congo with over 29 military bases in Africa, and yet insecurities are only increasing in Africa. Does this mean that the presence of the UN is here to create instability so that they can protect and have a reason to stay in and continue to loot out from the people? As a matter of fact, ever since this country's independence, there have never been any fair and free elections. Africa has been heavily forced to use democracy, which, when something is generic, let me say, if something is used by everybody, we can already assume that something good is in it. But when something is forced to a people, whereby the people who are forcing that on you are not using it, it simply means there is a question sign on what they are forcing on you. We also saw how vaccines were sent to Africa, where they were openly banned in the West that such vaccines should not be used in the West, but they brought them to Africa. It can already tell you that something here is wrong, and that is the case in the DRC Congo. I remember that Paul Kagame had to send troops to the DRC Congo to stabilize that area, and the work they did for just a matter of a year was what the United Peacekeeping Force have not done for 20 good years, with an extra expenditure of $1.2 billion. Why are we spending this money making life very difficult for the Africans
where you have over close to 40 political parties in the DRC Congo, making life become very expensive. To run an election, to run a campaign, to run a political party, it takes a lot of money. Why do we have to bring all of these things in an underdeveloped people where they do not need to have leaders and governments, where in order for you to get a leader up there, you need to spend heavy sum of amount of money, when yet the mass population do not even have potable drinking water. This is why we are saying that a time has come where in Africa, where if we are not able to understand that the continuity of every nation lies in the youth and these children, and that the priority of the African Union was not only to free all the member states conflict, but was to improve the standard of living of these children, who are the future of that Agenda 2063. But we are not seeing that, because the conflicts in Africa are only rather growing. And the few countries that are trying to break away from colonial systems are being targeted and are being sanctioned by the very bodies who are talking about Agenda 2063. So we really wonder whether this Agenda 2063, is it for the Africans to emerge, or is it for the AU to build EU in Africa? That is a question I want to know, because in the African Union, the United Nations also has a seat equally as the EU. So we want to really know whether this Agenda 63, is it for these children that are being recruited in armed conflict groups to kill the future of Africa, or is it to build how will I call it, a powerhouse, as they say, that they want Africa to be a powerhouse in 2063. Africa has always been a powerhouse ever since time immemorial, where all the nations of the world are feeding from Africa. So you cannot tell us that Africa will become a powerhouse in 2063, when it is, even as we are speaking now, all the multinationals are in Africa. Chinese are here, Russians are here, British are here, Americans are here, Belgians are here, name them all, French, they are all in Africa. What are they doing if Africa is truly not that powerhouse? We know of DRC Congo to be the richest nation of the world. America has decided to make it its office. It has turned it into an economic market where if the DRC Congo does not survive, America cannot succeed. So this is what we want to really know. Why does the African Union sit back and all the other African member states allow the youth and the future of Africa to be abused at this level? We saw in South Africa 1976, where official report came out of 300 and something children were being killed in the Soweto uprising. But the proper analysis goes right to 800 and something children that were killed by the imperialists in Africa. That simply tells us that our youth are heavily targeted. That simply means that in order for you to cut a man's life is to kill his offspring, because the continuity of that man lies in his seed or in his children. And so if you are able to target the children, it means that the man indeed has no future. So AU is really convincing us that Africa has no future in 2063, because EU and UN have comfortably sat in AU to journey them into a place where they would keep Africa into what I call dead slave, where the generations at that period that will have no memory of what Africa was supposed to look like. So they are killing the future of Africa. If we cannot protect our own children, then we, the fathers, and we, the parents, and we, the leaders, really truly have no responsibility over this generation, have no accountability over this generation, because we are here to protect those that are coming behind. We are here to build a serene future, a serene atmosphere where the African women, the African children can grow. You go in America, 70% of the African Americans are all in penitentiaries. Women are single-handedly growing up children, which simply means that these children will not grow with their father. So we have realized that children are heavily targeted in all spheres of conflicts in Africa, intentionally by the West. Because if you are really talking about depopulation, how do you make a statistic of a mortality, a death rate in the country of DRC Congo that is damn rich, between 60 years and 61 years life expectancy, in a country that has enough reason to live even for 150 years if they best use their resources. But the United Nations will build statistics and say that life expectancy is at 60 to 61 years. Who is making this analysis and who is causing the condition to keep these people whereby they cannot live more than this gap period of time? This is what we are talking about, that if we Africans do not come together, build unison and understand that our problems are common and our enemies are common to us, and the targets of the enemy towards us is common, and if we do not come together, we cannot defeat the purpose of the agenda of the West in Africa. As a matter of fact, the United Nations should not even be a peacekeeping force in Africa, because they have not solved any problem anywhere. As a matter of fact, ever since the opening of the UN peacekeeping force, they have not resolved any conflict nowhere in the world. As a matter of fact, they have been only overthrowing government, regime change, pushing democracy to where they want it to go, when they by themselves are not disciples or servants of democracy. They do not do that which they say with their own heart, which they do not believe in their own heart. So we Africans at this point, that makes the majority. That simply means that we know where our problems are coming from, and we understand that we are that change. Change is within us. We cannot seek help outside when help is within us. And we understand that it is only us who can bring this change to Africa, make this change in ourselves, and be able to help one another in order to grow beyond this condition. Because if you look at the youth, they have no form of proper upbringing. As a matter of fact, majority of their parents have been killed. They do not have good education. They do not have good background. They do not come from responsible families which have already been destroyed by civil conflict. So the children are left on their own to be used as instruments to serve the interests of politicians and political ambitions. And this is what is happening in the Congo DRC. Arms conflicts today in Africa has now become the largest business, where the multinationals will build militias, build rebel groups, create instabilities in areas that have heavy resources, drive out the natives of that area, and then they allow rebels to take hold of that place, and then they begin to loot out from those areas. That is exactly what the Americans are doing in the DRC Congo. In the days of Charles Taylor, they did the same thing. The American peacekeeping force came and they stood at the shores of Liberia and were looting out diamonds and gold. While the Liberians were on the street killing one another, they were there looting out resources. As a matter of fact, they did not do any effort to bring peace or to create a stable atmosphere in Liberia, but they were there for the resources, and that was the same thing Charles Taylor told them. It was the same thing that Gaddafi told the Libyans. They are coming for you. They are coming for your diamonds and your gold. By then, Africans did not understand it, but time has proven it wise. That is Liberia. Almost close to 60% of its youth are under drug abuse. And these things are done intentionally by the imperialists to destroy the future of Africa, so that even in that agenda 2063, the imperialists will still be in Africa, because this is what AU has proven to us, that they have become now that transport vehicle that wants to carry EU and UN to 2063 in Africa. So that at that period, Africa will become now a product of the West, whereby we are no longer, if they are talking that AU succeeded from OAU. How do you succeed a man who has not finished his goal and his course, and you say you have succeeded him? These are some of the things that sometimes it really baffles us. But we are saying that as Africans, we have come of age, and I want to believe that at this junction where we are in Africa, the masses of the African people will have to come together and begin to decide their own future. Because if we want to allow our destiny in the hands of these few, almost to 3.3% of the African leaders who are tied at the level of the United Nations. After the United Nations have broken Africa down into 54 nations, balkanization, and then they took us in broken pieces and brought us into what they call the Commonwealth, the United Nations, where Africa does not have its unity, does not have its sovereignty. You've broken them into pieces. You've refused them to be united, and then you brought them into your own union, where you refuse them veto power. This is the kind of democracy that they are teaching us, that you can be divided and never, you must not come together, but you can only be together if you become slaves in our own house. This is what they are telling us. So we want to believe that a time is now where we Africans have to already by this time understand where we are today in Africa and the powers that are controlling Africa, and what we must do if we have to push away this agenda. Africans worldwide will need to come together like we saw in Ethiopia, like we are seeing today in Mali. Mali is breaking free. They are changing they are in the process of changing their currency, they are changing the language, and they have removed the colonialists out of Mali. These are the problems of Africa. The problems of Africa are not religious problems. The problem of Africa is that we are facing imperialism, colonialism, and neo-colonialism, which affects the African people in conflicts, in poverty, in bad health. As a matter of fact, do you know that Ghana is rated as one of the countries where road accidents killed, the amount of Africans it kills every year reaches up to 60%. It is very alarming. As a matter of fact, Africa has become that place where over 33 countries of Africa are heavily indebted, including Ghana and Rwanda. It's just like you see a healthy man moving on the street, but he's bleeding from within. This is how Africa is today. Africans are expecting us to settle for half. Africans are expecting us to settle for something less. But we are standing as the future of Africa, that we are not going to settle for what is lesser than our full political right. And that is our position. And that is why we continue to push the agenda for Africans to come together, knowing that there is power in unity. And this is the only way where we can overcome these challenges and these difficulties that we are facing, because the imperialists did it intentionally to separate Africans from Africa and then break down the African continent into all of these small nations that we are having, and then brought in a system which only projects our division, which only projects our vulnerability, and then appoints president by election using very poor children like this, very ignorant children like this, who will go out and vote, steal votes, just to put in a criminal who is going to become a weapon of mass destruction against his own people, called a head of state in a nation, to defend the identity of a country which an imperialist has broken down, and say, okay, let this hand become a head, and then you now take in as a president to defend that title. This is not the vision of the OAU. When the OAU came together in 1963, 33 head of state was to build one Africa and put a central government, which was not to be a democratic government, a government that is by the people and for the people, a government which meets the demands of its own people and make sure that all the other member states were free from colonialism and decolonize all these places, having what I call a continental, a global economic market for the African people, have everything for us so that Africa can become self-reliant. But this is not what AU claims to have succeeded from the OAU. In the OAU, EU did not have a seat. UN did not have a seat. So how does AU want to convince us that in 2002, when Thabo Mbeki single-handedly, as the last chairman of the OAU, changed it to AU, how does it now adopt that EU have a seat? Israel now have a place in AU, including the UN. So this is a purely colonial structure to promote colonialism and imperialism in Africa, and that is why the AU has the audacity to lay sanction on Mali. The ECOWAS has the audacity to lay sanction on Mali because they are not representing the African people. These are organizations that the Africans did not vote. We did not vote the AU, we did not vote the ECOWAS, and what we are saying is that the problems of Africa can only be best solved by Africans, and that can only happen when the masses of these youths will come together and understand that the reason why they are criminals today and they are rebels today, it is because someone is creating that condition for them to become what they are today. Not that these children are evil, not that Africans hate themselves. It is because of the systems which seeks to divide them, the system which leave them in this abject poverty situation, whereby they need, in order to survive, they will need to kill one another. In order to survive, they will need to pick up arms, and this is the condition in which the Africans are living today. If you want to look at all the multinational corporations in Africa, they are well settled in the midst of all of this conflict. They are not disturbed. Rather, it is the Africans that are disturbed. You want to look at all the democratically elected presidents who are in seat, they are not disturbed. It's rather the masses that are suffering because why? The resources of the nation is in the hands of few people, protecting it in the interest of the colonials. And that is where we are today in Africa.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Bako. This is an interactive program. Our numbers are on the screen. You can always call us and tell us what you think about today's topic, the issue of child soldiers. And it is noted that the number seems to be going up. More children are being recruited by armed groups or by the government. How can this phenomenon be addressed? That's the question we are putting out to you this day. So you can call us and lines are open and our numbers on the screen. You can call us and tell us what you think. And you can also watch us live on Facebook as this program is streaming live on Facebook, Africa Media. You can go to our page and you can watch the program and leave your comment. Now, Mr. Bako, from what you said earlier on, conflict seems to be the main problem as to why more children are being recruited by armed groups. Now, and over the years or over the past few months, we discovered that the conflict seemed to be increasing in the continent. What then can be done to address this issue of conflict in Africa? If not completely put aside conflict, how can this conflict be limited?
Well, the first thing I want to say here is that, I mean, as a political analyst and someone who has carefully followed the involvement of insecurities and terrorism in Africa, the birth of it began from after the September 9/11. I'm referring to the context of Africa. After the September 9/11 bombing of the World Trade Center, in 2002, the UN decided to open another organization called the AU, which we have today in Africa in 2002. And it was at that period where it was necessary and vital for the Bush administration or the agenda of the Americans to push in democracy strongly in Africa and in the Middle East if they were going to have a grip over the world. And it was at that period where they began pushing hard democracy in all of these areas. Democracy, it is that upgraded religion which violates and has no respect for other religions and other values, identities, and culture. It comes to take away the beliefs and to destroy the identity and value of the people. And that is why you realize that the first group of terrorists that sprang from Africa are the Islamic. Because democracy is against Islam and their values. They could not accept democracy because it's against their religion. And so this is the birth of insecurity in Africa. As long as Africa keeps or defend or fight to keep democracy, we will always at all times have insecurities in Africa, because if you have noticed, almost 95% of our elections are almost like war in Africa. Why? Because it's at the moment where people come out in all their different divided groups, either by tribes, either by political parties, either by religion. All of them come out and they are fighting to get one thing. Why they are faced with a common problem, they seem not to see it, but they are there fighting themselves who should be in charge, who should take that seat, not for the interest of the people, but for their own personal interest. This is where democracy leaves Africa today. And if you hear Boko Haram, the definition of Boko Haram simply means no Western education in Africa. That is the position of Boko Haram, and those are Islam, those are Muslims, let me put it that way. So they have a huge challenge with democracy because it is against the values of the Quran. That is a simple truth. So we will not have insecurity stop in Africa as long as African head of state in all these member states, where we heard about the silencing of the gun, because the head of states in Africa now became targets to these terror groups. And it became now an issue that insecurity in Africa now calls for concern, because now these leaders are being targeted. But because they are defending what is against the values of the people and the values of the land. It does not reflect the values of our founding father. And therefore means when injustice becomes a law, resistance becomes a duty. And this is what these people are doing. If you go to the Central Africa,
You go to even the Congo GRC, those rebels you are talking about, they are defending their land because they understand that their governments are there to sell out their nations and their resources. That is why the population is poor. It's the same case in Mali. It's the same case in Guinea-Conakry. It is the same case in Cameroon. Everywhere in Africa is the same case. When Magufuli rose up to defend the people, they termed him a dictator because the West believed that they were in charge of Africa. Same as Gaddafi. What was the challenge in Gaddafi that in Libya that they had to remove Gaddafi? Libya had lived in peace and very stable with the best economy in the world. Why did they have to remove Gaddafi? Look at where Libya is today, and now they are saying that the security of the Sahel region depends on Libya. If they knew it depends on Libya, why did NATO have to go and invade Libya if they really wanted security to be in the Sahel region? But they did this intentionally because they needed this instability in order to allow them to come in and plant their base and their military base so that they can secure their interest, and that's exactly what is happening in Africa. We did not have these insecurities in Africa 2001. We never. It was after the rise of the AU 2002 coming up, we started hearing of the Boko Haram. The Boko Haram coming up to resist this, what I call Western civilization of a religion called democracy, which takes away the identity of the people, destroys their culture, destroys their belief, makes no disrespect of make a disrespect of their own religion, and that is where we are today. That Africa now even has a center of democracy, where there's no center of democracy in America. As a matter of fact, the rights of the African Americans right now, as we are speaking in America, is threatened to be taken away. That's the voting rights of the African American as we are speaking in America. These are people who propagate democracy. But go and see the level of racial discrimination and racism which is in America alone, and the judicial killings that are taking place every day on our people. And they want to come and fool us of democracy, which they do not practice democracy. So we Africans, we need to understand that what is not generic should not be used in Africa. If Asia was using democracy, we can understand. Like some people say it is Christianity that has left Africa the way it is today. I said no. Indians are having Christians. They have churches. Same way they worship God is the same way they do it there. Chinese have Christians in China. You go to Middle East, they have Christians. You go to Europe, they even have more churches than in Africa, in Europe. You go to America, they have more churches, and even Satan Church in America that's not even in Africa. They have all kinds of churches. So what is generic? It means there must be something good in it. Even occultists are using the Bible. A lot of spiritualists are using the Bible. People use Bible for so many reasons. So Christianity is not the problem. In the crowd in Mali, I asked, are they not Christians? Are they not Buddhists, Hindus, Baha'i? And name what kind of religion. So we are not dealing here with religion as our problem in Africa. If you go to Ethiopia, Ethiopia has black Jews that dates way back to King Solomon in Ethiopia. They are living there with Christians and Muslims, no problem. Ethiopia has the oldest Bible of mankind. The Ethiopian Bible goes almost close to 1,000 years. So before the imperialists came to Africa with a Bible, Africa had already a Bible in Ethiopia. And we knew that Ethiopia was a symbol of the entire Africa before they break it down. And Ethiopia was the only country that was not colonized by the imperialists. So Ethiopia had Christians before the imperialists came to Africa. So our problem in Africa is not religion. Our problem in Africa is democracy that is causing bad leadership. People go in there to protect their interests, their party interests, and to keep treaties of the colonialists in their nation for the detriment of their own population. As long as the leaders are okay, they don't care about the masses. Look at DRC Congo. What is the government doing there to improve the life standard of the people? It was the same thing in Mali when the June 5 came together, wrote to ECOWAS to improve the life standard of the Malians, end corruption in Mali. Goita did nothing, and the ECOWAS laid no sanction. When the people are living in this condition as they are today in Africa, like in the DRC Congo, we have not had sanctions from the AU over the government. We have not had sanctions from the ECOWAS over the government. But let today, tomorrow, the people go out now and take their rights back into their hands. You start getting sanctions from the EU, from the UN, from the AU to the ECOWAS. But now the people are suffering. It is rather on the news. Humanitarian aid. They need aid, $1.something million. To aid who? Aid the people of Congo GRC. Or is it them to aid the world? Who is aiding who? So these are some of the propaganda that we are not honest. Where is the human rights organization to give the people the rights in which they are fighting for? Tomorrow, when they take their rights into their hands, you start accusing them of human rights abuse. You start accusing them of war, crimes against humanity. But when the people are suffering now that they are suffering, like we are seeing today in Ethiopia, when the central government was pushing hard on the Tigrayans, we had all kinds of sanctions, all kinds of human rights abuses and all of that. But when the people are suffering, nobody talks. This is where Africa has become today, and this is what democracy is trying to tell us, that as long as the government leaders are okay, democracy is okay. As long as the people are suffering and the leaders are okay, there's no problem with democracy. So they are proving to us beyond reasonable doubt that democracy is only for leaders. Leaders who keep the interests of the imperialists. That is what democracy has made us to understand. Because if tomorrow a coup takes place, like in Guinea-Conakry, you start getting sanctioned. Democracy has been abused. Democracy has been abused because a leader or a puppet leader that was keeping their interests has been removed. That's when they say democracy has been abused. But when the people and the masses are being abused, nobody talks that democracy is abused. So this is where they have left Africa, that we have really come to understand that democracy cannot work for Africa. It's too expensive. It needs campaign. It needs political parties. It needs money to rally people to choose it. Why must we spend to build when we don't have? As a matter of fact, our problem in Africa is not money. That's not our problem. Money in Africa is not our problem. What is our problem in Africa is lack of unity. Because we have what it takes. As a matter of fact, I used to see some images of people putting Africans and Chinese children, how Chinese children are advancing in technology, as if we are building China in Africa. We are not doing Europe or China in Africa. What we want in Africa is to be able to come together, unite, and begin to promote our own identity, push in our own civilization. Africans have the finest minds in the world. In every field, including technology, we come first. If you go to Egypt in those days of African ancient history, what our ancestors did till this modern day, science cannot apprehend the level of technology those people were able to build such pyramids. These are Africans. This is the African civilization. There is no civilization of the world that we boast without talking about Africa. So let Africans find values in themselves. If we build America, if we build Europe, if we build Asia, we can build Africa by Africans. It's as simple as it is.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Ebako. You can keep your calls coming in. Our lines are open and our numbers are on the screen. What can you say about today's topic? We would like to hear from you. Child soldiers, the number seems to be on the rise. What can be done to address this phenomenon? That's what we are trying to find out, and that's the problem. We are trying to seek a solution to this day on the program. Now, Mr. Bako, if I got you clearly, democracy does not really work well for Africa. Now, how can Africans be educated in relation to this? How can Africans be educated that democracy, which we see that the West or the imperialists are struggling to impose in Africa, is not the same thing that actually works for them over there? And how can Africans come to understand this and come together to build an Africa that is best for all Africans?
You see, it is simple. Every hardware is managed by a software. When you create a structure, you need to be able to bring in a system that is able to sustain that structure. And that is where democracy finds its place in Africa, because they were able to structure Africa in their own likeness. And then they brought in democracy, knowing that it is only through this system that structure can be sustainable. And that is why you realize that democracy has not been in the advantage of the African people. And that's why you realize that we have never been able to get in the leaders that meet the demands of their own people. That's a system, and the system is not a system that came from the African people. And that is why I said that when something is generic, we can all agree that something is good in it. China does not use democracy. United Kingdom does not use democracy. Russia does not use democracy. America does not use democracy. So why are they forcing the democracy to Africa? That is what I really want to know. This is just to tell you that democracy comes to portray the different diversities of the African people as a cause of division and not a cause of unity. It simply means that our diversities were supposed to be the beauty and the reason why we should live together. But democracy comes to rather shows how divided we are. And that's why you realize that in every democratic election, people always come out from different minority groups. As a matter of fact, we have always selected the majority from minority groups. That simply means that when you saw today in Mali how the masses went out and stood behind Assimi Goïta, they said, no, that's not democracy. You people must go back to an election. Assimi Goïta must come from a minority group. That's what they were telling us. So majority is trying to get one man to be their leader. Democracy says, no, you must go back through a ballot box. So there must be something in that ballot box that the Americans still need to tell us, because I want to believe that that is where the occult technology of manufacturing leaders that are against their own people can only come from the ballot box. Now the Malians have bypassed the ballot box and said, okay, since you people are seeking for majority, here we are. They say, no, go back to the ballot box. So that simply means that they are not interested for what we call transparency. They are just here to get the rule of the minority over the majority. Like I cited the case of a country like Sudan, a population of 41 to 42 million persons, and a political party with a population of 3 million wins an election. So democracy is telling us that 3 million has become the population of 41 million. That is what democracy is telling us. So you come to realize that once you open up a competition and you are looking for the winner, you who set that competition can always determine who is going to win. Because if you decide to sponsor him, that's why all our government receive aids, arms, loans, credits, to do what? To empower them to repress the 85%. And that was why I also said that in the Berlin conference, there was a principle which was set over when they did the auction sale of Africa, that each buyer of Africa must be able to gain 85% of its natural resources equally as its human resources. This principle is very logical. When you are able to hold down 85% of a man's capital or a people's natural reserve, it simply means that you have kept 85% of its population under abject poverty. Because that is the destiny of the people and the future of the people, which you have decided to hold 85%. And such principles goes in all African countries. And that's why I realize that all the cases of Africa is all the same. Because that was the purpose of the Berlin conference. And the only system to sustain that profit from coming all the time is to bring in what I call a dictator in the form of a system, and it's only democracy. When Hitler was building Germany at a vital point where it was important for the German economy to emerge, he closed down all political parties, closed the office of a president, and declared himself a dictator. Today, we want to promote dictators that are representing the African people. The West says no, there must be a regime change. The West says that they don't abide by the Constitution. Who created the Constitution? Is it our founding father or is it the UN? It's the UN. When the UN was being formed and made in 1945, was there any African leader or any African representative? The answer is no. In 1884, when they were breaking down the African continent in 54 nations, was there any other African representative there? The answer is no. So no one sees the crime which the West has committed over Africa. No one here talks about courts that should be raised up to carry such nations to court and then let them pay for reparation. But they cannot pay for reparation while they are still in Africa. It's just like taking from me and giving it back to me. They must leave Africa and then we take them for reparation so that we should drain them and they should not have any source to supply back to their coffers. How do you explain that America becomes the second largest gold reserve in the world? How many gold mines do they have? Everything is from Africa. Go to Britain, the same thing. Vatican, the highest guarded, most guarded place in the world is Vatican, their library, and the largest gold reserve. Where are the golds coming from? All is coming from Africa. So what we are saying here is that we understand this political strategy these people are doing. And if some of these our leaders have decided to succumb and to carry their people into an occult society called the UN, to sell them as slaves at the detriment of their own future, we, this population and this generation of today, we are saying that we will master our own destiny and we will champion our own destiny and we will pursue the right to self-determination. That is our position, and we will rescue our leaders who have entered into this cord that they cannot break away from. We are going to rescue our leaders and rescue our leadership in Africa and be able to start building new systems and leaders that are going to reflect their own people.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Bako. We have a few more minutes to be together. Our lines are still open. You can always call us and tell us what you think about today's topic, the issue of child soldiers. How can this phenomenon be addressed? Why are children always at the center of conflict? These are a vulnerable group of persons that should be protected during such periods. Instead, they find themselves at the losing end. They are the ones that are recruited to fight in such conflicts. What can be done to curb or even eradicate this phenomenon? That's what we'd like to know. So you can call us. We have a few more minutes to be together. You can call us and tell us what you think about today's topic. And now, Mr. Ibako, we are almost coming to the end of the program. Now, when we take a look at this issue of child soldiers, usually during conflict, we know women are children. These are the group of persons that should be protected a lot. But nowadays, we see that, even in the past, children are the ones who actually bear the brunt of such conflict, and we have children under the age of 18 being recruited into be it the National Army or be it by armed groups. Why do you think children are targeted?
That is again, though that is a topic we are discussing, but I think that you have presented the question in a more precise manner. You see, one thing Africans and other people who may not be of the origin of Africa, one thing you need to understand is that the world is ruled by a system. And countries like China have been able to understand how this world is being ruled. That's why China decided to build its own system away from the general system that the Americans and the Europeans are pushing in the rest of the world. You see, the force of the UN or the force of every nation or any organization in any nation or in any continent is a youth population. You see, when a man becomes old, he can only dream dreams. In order for him to realize any of those dreams, he needs the energy of a young man to get that done for him. And if I can lay that as a foundation of the principle which is being used at the level of the UN and at the level of our government, you can understand why children are heavily targeted. Because there are activities where those people cannot do it. They can plan it, organize it, but to execute it, you need energy, speed, and manpower. That's where the youths come in. So you need to be able to keep them in a particular condition so that you can use them at any time that you so fit. And that is why one of those conditions to use those kind of people and to control them is to keep them under abject poverty. So the intention for Africans to stay poor and its 85% should be heavily exploited and is reserved to be taken away was done intentionally for control and for divide and rule. Because each time you keep a people in poverty, you leave them in darkness. And when you leave them in darkness, they are always bound to commit crimes. And as long as they commit crimes, they are always at the mercies of the crime organizers, the people who make the crime. So they put it in such a way that it's your fault when yet it's their fault. But they don't need you to understand what they are doing, else they can't control you. That is why the people who are controlling the world are people who are in the position of truth. And the reason why they don't want you to know what they know, is because if you know what they know, they won't be able to control it anymore. So it is very important that those that are in control are those that are in the position of truth. And those that are being used by those that are controlling them needs to be in a condition of ignorance and poverty. Poverty is a clear sign of ignorance. It's a clear symptom of a poor man, is poverty. It simply means that the man has not yet known either himself and why he is in that condition and does not know what he has in order to develop his own life condition. And so this is why the youths are heavily targeted, because there is no way
the UN or our governments can plan and execute without what we call the energy of the youth. The energy of the youth becomes like the engine that drives the nation, but someone needs to fuel it, and those that are fueling it are those that sit up there. You will never see them coming down on the streets. If you go in all conflicts in Africa, including NSAS, all are youths. You will never see the politicians on the street. They sit up there, build systems that instigate and agitate the youth to go out, to go and accomplish their mission. And that's why when you hear that votes are being stolen, only youths do those things. If you hear armed conflicts over this party and this party, youths are the ones to execute that. So youths have only been left in Africa at the level of compliance. They have not been brought into what I call decision making. They are not involved in politics. They have not been brought to that place where they are told and they are taught to be masters of themselves. Our African leaders are afraid to teach the Africans this education because they always want to be there so that if tomorrow they are not there, their family can take over. And so it has now become, how will I call it, another form of colonialism by Africans over Africans, taught to them by a colonialist. So that's what is happening in Africa.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ibako. Now we are rounding up, and it seems most African governments are really not taking the issue of child soldiers into consideration. Now, as Pan-Africanist and as a political analyst, what can you suggest to curbing this rate of children being recruited into armed groups? What can you suggest as a solution to maybe, if not eradicating, or maybe if not eradicating, but actually reducing the number of children who find themselves in such conditions?
Well, I think that we should take this issue very serious because we all have children and this concerns the future of Africa, and the future is now. So what do we do? I think that the existing leaders or the uprising leaders should take a different route. If we expect to repeat one thing over and over and expect to have change, is another definition of a fool. We have been running down this road of democracy, which has only landed us in insecurity and ending up abusing our children. Can we fight for change and not fight to keep democracy? Because if truly Africans come together and they are fighting for change, I want to believe that our youths and these children will be heavily protected. Sure. Those will be our first priority. But because we have missed the priority, that we are not fighting for change, we are rather fighting for democracy. And this has allowed the youth to be exposed to violence because our leaders today are no longer focused on the values of family. They are rather focused on the value of party, multi-partyism and democracy. So if we change this and begin to apply what is natural, I think we'll be able to succeed. This is very important. Where, like in China, 2,980 persons appoint leader. If we begin to appoint, that is already an indication that we have concern for our families. Yeah. But if we want to go and vote, that is to go and gamble and make as if the country has become a lottery, where the future of the citizens become now a game of chance. You lose, you win. You lose, you win. And we have struggled this all the time and we have been losing. So we have come to realize that this is not really a game of chance. There's somebody who is there deciding the future of over 1.2 billion Africans, and that is the UN. So what we are saying is that it is not a crime if we boycott the UN. It is not a crime if the masses of the African people come together and say we want to be masters of ourselves, like we see in Mali today. We can still decide and say, hey, you, if you cannot support us, please dissolve. We don't recognize you. We don't consider you to be a body that seeks our interest, and we move ahead and we do what we must do. It's as simple as it is.
Thank you so much, Mr. Atem Ibako, for honoring our invitation this day, and thank you so much for your great insight as concerns the issue of child soldiers in Africa, a phenomenon that seems to be growing and something which the continent would love to be curbed, because the youth are actually the future leaders of tomorrow. I want to thank all those who took out time to participate in the program, those who were there to make the program program a successful one in one way or the other. We are not forgetting our technicians and all our crew in the newsroom who put one or two things together to make the program successful. Another edition of the program comes up tomorrow. Do not miss out for another interesting topic will be brought to you. Until then, you have a wonderful day in the company of more programs on Africa Media.
Hello, you're on the program. Good day to you, sir.
I very appreciate it. I very appreciate all what you are talking about it. Good day and good day to all the viewers of Africa Media. Thank you, Africa Media. Thank you for what you are doing.
Hello, you're on the program.